everyone, and welcome to the 17th episode of Viral Banter. We've been getting amazing feedback from this show, and we're so excited to have so many Generation Liberty members listening every week. This week, we're actually only joined by 3 guests because it's been a busy week, as many of you know, but I'm sure we're going to have just as amazing banter as usual. So let's begin with a familiar face, our coordinator at Macquarie University, Anjali.
Hi, Renee. How are you?
Good, good. I like the balloons in the background. They're very nice. And another familiar face to the show, a member of our illustrious coordinator alumni. Please welcome Crystal.
Hey, Renee. It's great to be back.
Great to have you on the show again. And another familiar face, the always insightful and informative Theodora.
Hi, Renee. Great to be back on.
Now, I think that there is no other topic that we would have to talk about first today than the disturbing footage of the arrest of Zoe Lee Buller, a woman in Ballarat who was handcuffed in her pajamas in front of her children for posting something on Facebook. She posted an event about a peaceful protest in Ballarat, which is only in stage 3. Theodora, you live in Ballarat, so I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, needless to say, I was shocked when I saw this footage, and it is terrifying to know that this happened so close to home. Gideon Rosner said this on the last episode of the IPA with you, that we should be watching this video over and over again. We need to share it with our friends and neighbours. We need to show it to our children and grandchildren way after lockdown is over, so that we never forget that there came a time in Victoria's history when a woman was arrested for a post on social media, which, as you said, was nothing more than promoting a peaceful anti-lockdown protest in Ballarat. My family and friends who come from immigrant backgrounds have taken this especially badly. As you can imagine, for example, my Russian teacher at uni told me this is the first time since she's moved to Australia that she has thought about going back to Russia. And, obviously for anyone in Australia whose family has lived through totalitarianism, this is a very concerning development. And, a year ago, if you had said that Victoria Police would be arresting people for social media posts, you would have been incredulous, and naturally so. But now that it's reality, I think hopefully people are starting to realize that the new way of life in Victoria does actually have totalitarian tendencies. But what really concerned me was how many people are trying to justify this arrest. The comments section, once this video was shared by news outlets, it was full of people condoning the actions of Victoria Police. But I was taken aback most when my brother Elijah, who's in year 12, he showed me what his friends are saying, his school friends are saying on Facebook. They're saying, Zoe deserved it. This is what you get for breaking the law. She had it coming. What did you expect for sharing a protest on Facebook? So if you are in any doubt as to the terrible state that Victoria is in right now, look no further than 18-year-olds condoning the arrest of a pregnant woman for a Facebook post.
Yeah, that is really, really worrying. The youth should be rebellious. They shouldn't be pro-cop.
Exactly.
Bring back punk, bring back something if they're going to be acting like this. And I think the real hypocrisy to highlight here is Ballarat is in stage 3 lockdowns, not in stage 4 like the rest of Melbourne. And the Black Lives Matter protest occurred in Melbourne during stage 3 lockdown. And the police did not only allow that, they basically facilitated it and helped it happen. So that's absolutely terrifying. But Anjali, people are saying that this video is proof that, that there's a level of hypocrisy with how these laws are being put in place, but also that it's evidence that this is a police state now. Does it disturb you how far the Victorian Police and government is going and expanding its powers under this state of emergency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my words, it'd be a dystopian nightmare because it is anti-democratic, it is autocratic, it's unnecessary. And I think Melburnians are enduring some of the longest and most draconian restrictions that any Western leader has imposed on their people. I think the original 12-month extension that Daniel Andrews was seeking is senseless. It's essentially giving him absolute power to do what he wants, to make decisions without any parliamentary oversight. and effectively remove those checks and balances on executive power. I also think that shutting down Parliament indefinitely for unreasonable amounts of time is stifling our democratic processes. So all of that shocks me. And I think that we need to question this integrity of our government when the leader doesn't respect those checks and balances on our political system. And we need to scrutinise that balance between enabling governments to respond swiftly, but as well as accountability, because the Victorian government has made numerous blunders. They've, with the hotel quarantining, as well as tracking of COVID outcomes. So I don't think that the government's power should be expanded at this stage. They should be constrained.
Yeah, I really agree, Anjali. And the way that this government has managed to duck and weave and avoid questioning and avoid scrutiny has been really disturbing to watch. We've seen scenes in the upper house of Victoria where members of parliament have literally said that they will not answer the question during the time and just send an email in response. So even when question time does sit and when Parliament does have some small of scrutiny, they are still avoiding questions, which is really worrying to see. But Christoph, Theodora touched on something earlier, which I think is very true. One of the most disturbing elements of this has been the people who agree with what the police do, and some of the vitriol we're seeing online of people saying that Zoe deserved this. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, I remember back in the time as Theodora was mentioning, it was like her younger brother's high school mates and stuff. Oh yeah, I do remember in sort of high school, you're a bit more naive and you're sort of a bit more trusting, or like a very trusting of government. So if government has a problem, or if the police, particularly the police more so than government, if the police have a problem and make an arrest and someone's saying, well, the chances are, well, they probably did do something wrong and they broke the law. So any narrative that the police give, right, to justify the arrest, it was generally believed by, like, more so by those who are more naive, like in the not to belittle, like, I was very naive in high school, but when it gets more worrying, when it's adults, when it's grown people, when it's people who like you and me and older who are, and I've seen the vitriol all over social media against this against Zoe. And for me, I take it as very political. In the same vein that you mentioned earlier, Renee, about how the Black Lives Matter protests was also done in a stage 3 lockdown, and the Victoria Police actually facilitated. They even took a knee. The Assistant Commissioner, I think it's the Assistant Commissioner, Luke Cornelius, is on record for saying one thing during the BLM protest, saying, we understand there are the grieve, the seriousness of this cause, and we want to stand for the community. We want to make sure that we stand for the community. Yet in the same vein, in this scenario with Zoe, who did nothing more than post an event, what she called a bimbo moment later on, but post an event for a peaceful protest against the lockdown, ironically on Freedom Day in Ballarat. And the police come out, and Luke Cornelius comes out and spins a different narrative, saying what she's done violated, like, put the entire community at risk. Yeah,
I totally agree there, Crystal. And this is something else that Gideon touched on on IPA with you. And I think it might be the fact that, I hate to make a generalization here, but the people who attended the Black Lives Matter protest generally would have voted for Daniel Andrews, or at least would have preferenced Daniel Andrews. So, got to keep those people happy. However, the people who are concerned about these lockdowns, concerned about the infringement of their civil liberties, probably aren't going to vote for Daniel Andrews. So we're seeing a different sort of treatment for one person pretty much based on their political beliefs, which is really, really worrying to see. But there was another video that went viral this week, though I perhaps would put this more in the infuriating category rather than the disturbing category. And that is the video of the Speaker of the House from the US, Nancy Pelosi, violating the rules she expects others to follow. The video shows her visiting a hair salon, which are supposed to be closed in San Francisco. And the icing on the cake is she's not even wearing a mask. Pelosi is 80 years old, someone who should fear coronavirus, and she certainly has been spreading a lot of fear about this pandemic. So, Anjali, what do you think of this hypocrisy that's on display?
In my view, I think it makes an absolute mockery of all of the draconian incursions that are being imposed on the civil liberties of Americans. When the people like Nancy Pelosi are enforcing these rules live by another set of rules and brush off any notion of having to wear a mask in this situation. And I think the fact that Pelosi is claiming that she was thrown under the bus and refuses to take any responsibility, or says that she was tricked, and is even demanding an apology from the salon is deplorable, especially when coronavirus restrictions have destroyed many of these businesses, these hair salons, who have been forced to shut down, who have had to lay off a number of their staff. To have someone like Nancy Pelosi come in and say and make these accusations and insinuations is a slap in the face for many business owners.
Yeah, I totally agree there. It's really, really disturbing, especially that response where she said that she's taking responsibility for being involved in a setup, not taking responsibility for breaking the rules that she expects everyone else to follow. Christo, what are your thoughts on that, her calling this a setup?
Oh, look, if she's claiming personal responsibility, she would have voted Republic years ago. But really, honestly, her claim was that I was not breaking any COVID restrictions because you're allowed to have one-on-one sort of like, business to customer transactions, right? And what I find, this is notwithstanding the fact that she wasn't wearing a mask at all when she came into the hair salon. But what's funny is that the hair salon owner actually made a very good point regarding this, this rule, this one-on-one restriction, is that she's like, all my clientele is one-on-one, is a one-on-one transaction. I'm the hairdresser. They're getting their haircut. It's just me and them. So why can't I have business if this is allowed? But she's been closed 6 months and she's ready to pack up and leave San Fran. Like it's beggars belief. If Pelosi wants to spring the line, I'm not breaking any COVID restrictions because it's a one-on-one. It's a one-on-one setup. That is exactly what hairdressing is. It is easy to facilitate only one person allowed in by appointment at a time in a hairdresser in order for this salon to keep her business going. Like, don't the Democrats think about the economy? Don't they care about the livelihoods of these people? Or is it, as you can see, what Pelosi has done, has just bent the rule to her own, where everyone else, it's a rule for everyone else except me. Do as I say, not as I do. Why? Because I'm 80 years old and I need my hair done.
No, I totally agree there. And it's really worrying that a person enforcing the rules as well doesn't seem to know the rules exactly herself. But I had a thought while watching this video, Theodora, and that it has had me thinking. We have all these daily press conferences with Daniel Andrews, one every single day. And I think I might actually start paying attention to the exact length of his hair. Not that I am implying that our great premier would ever break the rules, but I think I might be getting out a ruler every day just to make sure that he's definitely not going to a hair salon. Theodora, do you think you're going to start paying attention to that too?
Well, I certainly am, now that you've brought that up, Renee. Unfortunately, it does seem to be more and more of a hallmark of politicians worldwide that they're willing to use their positions of power to gain benefits for themselves while the rest of the population struggles. And that sort of behavior, in the case of Nancy Pelosi, is obviously a slap in the face of small business owners everywhere. But, with Dan Andrews in particular, we know what kind of man he is. And I remain unconvinced that his expressions of sympathy and understanding in these daily press conferences are genuine.
Yeah, I think the rules are just getting so disturbing. And the curfew especially is so strange. There has never been a curfew in Victoria throughout its history, including during war times. And when it was first imposed, him showing those photos on Twitter of the empty streets and saying thank you was so Orwellian and really, really disturbing. to watch. But unfortunately, there's more bad news about these restrictions and its impact on people's lives. This now going to the Queensland-New South Wales border. In this example, students at more than one school across the border in Queensland are not allowed to go home to New South Wales for the break between term 3 to term 4 to visit their families. And that's if they want to be able to return to Queensland for the rest of their education. The example that I looked at was at Stuart Home School, which is a Catholic girls' school in Brisbane. They released a video with the girls at the school asking for compassion from the Queensland government so they can see their families. Anjali, what did you make of this?
When I saw that video, that really struck a chord with me. To see the level of disproportionality and excessiveness from our government in keeping families and their kids apart, I think it's extremely psychologically and emotionally difficult for these young people who don't have the support of their family around them. And as well as the fact that many children, the fact that they're barred from seeing their family could be until Christmas, apparently, because of the fact that as school boarders, the school year only ends in December. And also the fact that if they are going to have to quarantine for 2 weeks, that's going to be severely impacting their education and schooling when the school terms only go for 9 weeks itself. And what's another concerning thing is that many of the kids in the video actually live in areas where the cases are zero. There aren't actually any cases of COVID in those areas. There is no blanket arrangements to allow these boarding school kids to go back home, and there's only individual exemptions that can be granted. And I know that from reading a bit about this, many parents have reapplied many times and been knocked back from actually having those approved. So I think overall, government decision making has not really included or essentially excluded the voices and forgotten these school boarders, and these restrictions aren't essentially in the best interest of them.
Yeah, I think you made some really good points there. And not only are most of these girls returning to areas that have zero active cases, they're also areas that have never had a case. And there is also generally an exemption for agricultural workers. And most of these girls actually live on properties that produce agriculture. They are going back to farms. And generally, most children of farmers and live on these properties actually do assist their parents during the break. So there's an exemption for agricultural workers. It makes sense that there'd be an exception for the children of agricultural workers. Theodora, do you think that this is an example of the Queensland Premier maybe playing politics?
Look, I think this whole situation is just terrible. I can't imagine being a student, especially a Year 12 student, with all of this uncertainty. I just don't understand what kind of world the Queensland Premier is living in when she has no compassion for these students who are just trying to continue life as normal, get good grades, get into uni. She's literally playing with their futures, and there's no pardonable reason for that she could possibly offer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree there. And Crystal, the Premier of Queensland has made exemptions for NRL players to travel across the border for matches. She has also recently accepted a deal from the AFL to have the grand final in Queensland with a large crowd. But she won't make an exemption for young girls who want to see their families and visit areas with zero cases. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, Renee, I wish I could say this is something new, but unfortunately it's not. I think George Orwell summed it up very nicely in Animal Farm. It's a great strand of Marxist thought. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And I think a prime example of this, especially in this example regarding the AFL Grand Final, is you have someone like Eddie Maguire, who wants to be a millionaire, Eddie Maguire, from Collingwood, Victoria, with 453 cases of coronavirus strand, wants to fly to Brisbane, right, and gets an approval for his reason for coming to Queensland to watch a football game, right, to watch Aussie rules. His net worth is a multi-millionaire. Now you look at the kids. You look at the kids in in Tenterfield, New South Wales, right? Going to Toowoomba to reunite with their families. 0 cases of coronavirus. What's their net worth? As there's a great meme going around that actually highlights this, their net worth is an Xbox Live Gold membership and $20 worth of pocket money. To the government, they're not worth salt. They're not worth anything, right? If you have money, if you have influence, if you're part of the elite club, I'm all right. You can go through the VIP channels. All right, we'll let you off. You have exceptions, because you're a notable person of society. What does that say about the actual restrictions themselves? What does it say actually about the threat of the virus itself? These are questions that have to be raised. If you're going to impose a lot on the economy and on society by consequence, take these restrictions seriously, because you're not just playing politics here, you're playing with people's lives, young ones at that. And if they're doing this fully aware and playing the game of politics, they should be ashamed. And honestly, dare I say it, should resign. But that's just my opinion. What's that worth? I'm not Eddie Maguire.
No, I appreciate your passion, and I totally agree. And I hope that this actually backlashes against the Premier of Queensland. I definitely think she is playing politics. She did look like she was going to lose the upcoming state election, but the border closure has been proving to be popular amongst the Queensland population. So she's gone hard line on that issue, not making exceptions for compassionate reasons and even for medical reasons, as we saw in the disgusting example and heartbreaking example of the woman from Ballina who lost one of her children, one of her twins, because she could not be allowed into a Brisbane hospital. The fact that the Queensland Premier did not turn around and think maybe I should make some changes after an incident like that is really, really heartless, I think. But now, since we are discussing Orwellian rules and it feels like we are living in Orwellian times, I thought that we might play an Orwellian game. So it's called Room 101. Now, of course, you would all know that Room 101 refers to a chamber in the Ministry of Love in George Orwell's novel 1984 that contains the worst things in the world. But it also has become the name of something of a parlour game, which is quite popular in the UK. And in this game, you discuss your pet hate and try and persuade the host or me that these things should be consigned to the oblivion of Room 101. So pretty much removed from existence. So this is not for things that are obviously horrible, like murderers or poverty. Just take those as given, have already been in Room 101. It's more for things that are pet hate, things that annoy you. So an example I would give for myself would be people who are rude to flight attendants and act as if they're on their own private jet when they're on a flight. I had an example one time when I was on a flight and this woman got on incredibly late and had her bag and was insisting, but I'm a businesswoman. I have business to do. I need my bag to be above my seat. It can't be anywhere else. And the flight attendant was trying to explain that she had got on late. There was no space above her seat and that she would have to put it somewhere else. Then she started pulling other people's bags down to try and put her bag up, and the flight attendant had to stop her. She then turned to me and said, "Can I move your bag? I am a businesswoman. I have business to do. I need to have my bag above me." And I just turned to her and said, "I am a businesswoman too. I am also going to work, so no." So that is the kind of category of things that we are looking for to put in Room 101. Maybe some of the people who annoy you on campus as well might be going into Room 101. So I'll start with you, Crystal. What do you want to put in Room 101?
Oh, I get a lot of pet peeves. In a similar vein to yours, I'd say, because I've come from a hospitality background, people who treat waiters like scum. People who treat them as if they're like the king and queen and they need to be waited upon as if they're like, the world's going to end or something, or they're like the little slaves or something. I hate it when people click their fingers. Click your fingers. I think it's never do it. I don't know if you're guilty of this, I'll forgive you now, but don't do it again. If you're out at a restaurant, I don't care if it's the Waldorf, it's Park Hyatt, I don't care. Never, or if it's a cafe down the road, never click your fingers at a waiter or a waitress, to get their attention, to come here and, I don't know, pour your water for you. Just don't ever treat them like scum. If I see that happening, I get very mad, and that should be in room 101 indefinitely.
I think I'm going to have to agree with you there. I also think that those people who do that definitely have not been a waiter or a waitress or worked in a service industry. And that's why I think it's important for everyone to have a service industry job at some point in their life. I worked in call centers while I was working during university, also worked as a waitress. So I know what it's like to be in those jobs. So I'm generally incredibly, incredibly nice to those people. But yeah, I can't stand people who talk down to waiters and waitresses. Anjali, are you agreeing that should go into room 101?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with that.
Okay, so that's one thing going into room 101. So I'll move on to you next, Theodora. What would you put in room 101?
Well, here's another example of some super entitled people, are the people who play music without headphones on public transport. And this is a massive pet peeve for me because, prior to lockdown anyway, I would spend upwards of 3 hours a day on public transport. So I use that time to do my readings for uni or just, try and get some work done for the day. And there's always someone who gets on, usually around like Bacchus Marsh, Melton area, not trying to bag out any particular suburbs, but it's where they come from. They get on and they blast really loud, really repetitive music from their phones. And even if people are sort of staring at them, giving them a death stare, they just ignore you. And yeah, it's just very frustrating. It's not something that I miss from my daily commute. But also, one more thing would be the people who hand out flyers at student elections on campus. They're very annoying and they interrupt conversations, and it's a bit rude. So
I think I'll have to definitely agree with the music played out loud on public transport. I also used to have to do a long commute every day for work from Wollongong to Sydney. And I generally would sit in the quiet carriage, which I think is one of the best inventions ever. The concept of the quiet carriage.
They're getting more in Sydney.
Yeah.
It's such a good concept. I love it. The quiet carriage, love it. But these people would play their music so loud sometimes that you could hear them from the other carriage, ruining the quiet carriage. So
yeah, and I don't know how it is in New South Wales, but on the V line, the quiet carriage is optional, like it's not an enforced rule, so the people just tend to ignore the signs, unfortunately.
Oh, that's really bad. No, in New South Wales, people take it pretty seriously. If you break the quiet carriage rule, someone will come up to you. Like, I've been sometimes on there and like had to take a phone call, pulled my phone out of my bag and be like, I'm on the quiet carriage, I just need to get out of here. And I've been told off for that. Like, people take it very, very seriously. Isn't that true, Anjali? Have you been in a quiet carriage before?
Downstairs, literally.
It's very, very enforced in New South Wales, which I do think is a good thing. And it's generally not enforced by, jackbooted thugs. It's actually enforced by the people on the train. It's a community enforcement of a rule. But yes, I think those people have to go into room 101. People giving out pamphlets, there's some of them that are okay. I don't know if I can put all of them in there. Some of them are not too bad.
We might have to screen them individually because there are some particularly bad ones.
There are some particularly bad ones. I think I might put, the Socialist Alliance ones who just do it like every single day, no matter what, if there's an election or not, the ones, constantly asking you to sign a petition. Maybe I can make room for them. But Anjali, what would you put in room 101?
I think I would put people who steal your parking spots. Like, you've been waiting for like 5-10 minutes for someone to get out of a parking spot and then have it stolen by another person. And I think it's so frustrating because it's pretty awful they've done that, but they also know they're awful for doing it and they just do it. So that's something that really just gets me, people who just steal your parking spots.
Yeah, and I know that university parking especially can get very competitive, and I've heard that this is a gripe with a lot of people. So I think I definitely think I'll have to allow that one into room 101. I've been trying to have a think about what I would put in room 101 apart from that woman on that plane. And I think it's, you know, when you walk down the street and you bump into someone and you both accidentally bump into someone and they go like, oh, and tut at you like it's all your fault. It's like, this was a mutual thing that happened. How do we both say sorry and move on? Like, especially when they actually are the one looking down and walk into you. And then they go like, oh, you're in my ways. I think I might have to put those people in room 101, but I think it's generally the theme that we have for room 101 is entitled people. So maybe Nancy Pelosi as well, with her one rule for her and different rules for others, might be a candidate for room 101 as well. But thank you guys for another amazing show of viral banter. So I'll have to thank you all for our special 3-guest episode. Thank you, Anjali, Christor, and Theodora.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you very much.
If you are not a member of Generation Liberty yet, you can join now at generationliberty.org.au for only $10, and you will get an awesome pack of stuff, including books, stickers, badges, bottle openers, heaps of fun goodies, worth way more than $10. Plus, you'll get all the information about upcoming episodes of Viral Banter and events when we can eventually have events. But for now, thank you for listening, and make sure that you stay safe, stay happy, and stay free.